Galapagos Triangle by Martin Hofhunsel. Prologue. The world didn't just end. It submerged. George jolted awake, the world spinning as if the plane were still falling from the sky. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming, until he realized he was still strapped into his seat on an aircraft that had become a sunken ship. Water crept in, shining like broken glass in the flickering light above, turning the scene into something that looked like a shipwreck painted by a madman. His heart raced, pounding against his ribcage as if trying to escape the confines of his body. Panic clawed at his throat, and he gasped for air. His breath was short and ragged. What had happened? The last thing he remembered was cruising high above the clouds, the engines droning like a lullaby, steady and sure, until everything shattered. Now he was adrift in a nightmare, surrounded by silence that rang louder than the chaos that must have unfolded moments before. As he blinked against the watery haze, he registered the absence of other passengers. He was alone. Muffled cries and frantic movements echoed in his mind. But here, in this drowned tomb, he was the last remnant of a fading dream. Outside the window, the view was disconcertingly serene. A stretch of water that glimmered with a deceptive beauty, inviting him to forget the horror that had just transpired. The seatbelt tightened around him, a cruel reminder of his predicament. George fought against it, his hands fumbling as he desperately sought to free himself from the confining straps. The flood was climbing, and each heartbeat felt like a countdown, one that came with the rising tide. Come on, focus. He struggled with the buckle, fingers slipping on the cold metal, the pressure of the current outside mingling with the fear that coiled within him. The plane had hit the waves like a stone, and the once familiar interior now felt like a foreign world, transforming into a capsule of impending doom. With a final, determined tug, the seatbelt released, and he propelled himself forward, plunging into the chilled depths. A shock shot through him, biting and unyielding. Breathe, think, move, survive. George waded through the waist-high water, each step a careful maneuver against the relentless current that surged around him. The waves clung to him, viscous and heavy, wrapping around his body like a dark promise of something worse to come. It swirled around his legs, tugging insistently as if urging him to turn back, to submit to the chaos that had taken over the cabin. Gushing in through the cracks of the wreckage, it rushed like an endless tide, filling the space with a thunderous roar that echoed ominously. I don't want to die here, he thought, trying to find a way out the watery tomb. It was a force that felt predatory, ready to ensnare him in its depths. As he pressed forward, his heart raced. The floor was slick and littered with debris, each step a precarious balance. He stared at the exit, its jagged opening outlined by the dim, flickering light, casting a ghostly glow across the scene. The door hung ajar, waves rushing through the breach with a violent insistence, the eastern Pacific itself trying to claim him. With every step closer, the pull of the current intensified, wrapping around him like a coiling serpent. He felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down, but there was no turning back now. Steeling himself against the encroaching tide, George pushed onward, the swirling sea lapping at his torso. The exit loomed before him, an invitation to freedom that felt both tantalizing and fraught with peril. He could see the surface glimmering beyond, a shimmering promise of escape. With a final burst of determination, he lunged toward the opening, ready to face the chaos outside. The rush of water around him surged with a ferocity that threatened to overwhelm, but he had come too far to let it pull him back. Gripping the edge of the plane's exit, he threw himself into the chaos. The flood swallowed him whole, dragging him down into its cold depths. For a moment, he was weightless, disoriented, struggling to find direction in the murky dark. Then, desperate for air, he kicked upward, breaking through the surface with a violent gasp, his lungs burning as the vast waves spread out around him. The currents twisted and churned, tugging at him with insistent force, as if the ocean itself sought to drag him into its depths. He fought against the pull, muscles straining as he struggled to stay oriented in the chaos. What now? He glanced around to find something to hold on to, some debris, some piece of luggage floating beside the place, as he caught a glimpse of something solid. An island, barely discernible on the horizon, silhouetted against the silvery light of the moon. It stood as a beacon of hope, a promise of refuge in the perilous sea. With renewed determination surging through him, George focused all his energy on that distant shore, summoning every ounce of strength he had left. The waves thrashed around him, pushing and pulling violently, but he refused to be swept away. Kicking hard, he cut through the waves, each stroke a defiance against the currents that sought to drag him off course. The salt water stung his eyes, but he blinked through the pain, keeping his focus on the island. With every powerful kick and pull of his arms, he made slow and painful progress. The ocean's grasp felt like a vice, but his will to survive ached bigger. He swam for his life, fighting against the tide as it swirled and lashed at him, each movement a battle against the unseen forces trying to claim his will. The island drew closer, the outline sharpening as he closed the distance. It seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, beckoning him with an irresistible allure. Every ounce of his being screamed to reach it, to feel the solid ground beneath his feet, to escape the chains of the water. He could feel the currents growing weaker as he pushed forward, the promise of land invigorating him. With a final, desperate surge, he propelled himself through the last stretch, muscles screaming in protest. The roar of the ocean faded slightly as he fought his way toward the shore, determined to breach the threshold between peril and safety. Finally, he felt the gritty sand beneath his fingertips, and with one last burst of effort, he clawed his way onto the beach, crawling and finally collapsing onto the warm, welcoming ground. The sea receded behind him, a retreating enemy, and he lay there, breathless and alive, staring up at the moonlit sky, heart still racing from the battle fought and won. 3 months and 20 days had slipped by since George washed ashore, each day blending into the next like the endless waves lapping at the sand. The island, though a picture-perfect paradise with swaying palm trees and sand as fine as powdered sugar, offered no companionship. The vibrant hues of nature, greens, blues, and the dazzling sunlight, felt like a cruel contrast to the solitude that enveloped him. How can something so beautiful feel so isolating? The sweet scent of blooming hibiscus wafted through the air, mingling with the saltiness of the ocean, reminding him of all the things he missed. He had built a small hut adjacent to the beach, nestled beneath the tree line where the towering palms provided a patch of shade from the scorching sun. The structure was simple, cobbled together from driftwood and large leaves, but it offered him a semblance of safety and a vantage point from which to observe the horizon. Day after day, he would sit outside, scanning the endless blue expanse for any sign of rescue, convinced that help would come from afar. The people. Where did all the people go? He thought so many times as the rhythmic sound of waves crashed against the shore and became both a lullaby and a reminder of his isolation. If only a ship would appear, he often thought, just one glimmer on the horizon would be enough to reignite my hope. The remnants of the plane that had once floated to the surface had dwindled to nothing. Supplies were long gone. He had scavenged every useful item that had washed ashore, but soon enough, the waves didn't bring anything usable to shore, leaving him to fend for himself. For weeks, he'd worked to stretch the limits of his lungs, testing how long he could linger in the deep, alone with the silence, inching closer to the wreck. He still fell short of the time he needed, but he was getting there, and somewhere down there, in the quiet dark, something waited. Maybe answers, maybe something else. I just need a few more seconds. Then I'll know. But for now, he relied on foraged fruits and the fresh water from a small pond hidden deep within the jungle. The clear liquid glimmered like a secret jewel, its still surface reflecting the sky, but the soft, earthy smell of the surrounding foliage served as a reminder that it could never fill the void of human connection. I can't believe I'm talking to the trees, he thought sometimes, but it's better than speaking to myself, I suppose. With each passing sunset, hope flickered like the waning light. He had spent countless hours exploring the island, his footsteps tracing the contours of the land, yet from the highest hill, he had seen no signs of human life, no smoke, no distant voices, nothing but the unbroken expanse of greenery and the blue horizon. From time to time, he ventured beyond his usual paths, drawn by the quiet hope of discovering another soul. But the island remained silent, offering no sign of life beyond his own. It wasn't exactly small. He guessed he could cross it in half a day if he dared, but he hadn't. The fear of exhausting his water before finding more held him back. To circle the island entirely would take a full day and night, an ordeal he couldn't risk without a planned stop, a place to rest, to shelter. Still, the thought lingered. Perhaps, somewhere beyond the trees and shoreline he knew too well, there might be something or someone waiting. Still, a flicker of hope remained, though he dismissed it as foolishness. He hadn't yet discovered all the island had to offer, and the thought of hidden corners yet to explore kept him going. The gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze was a constant reminder of his solitude. This place is a paradise prison, he mused, untouched and unyielding, and I am its only inhabitant. The distant calls of birds echoed through the jungle, a reminder that nature thrived around him while he felt more like an afterthought. Maybe I will explore the opening that looks like a cave. Perhaps I'll find something else, a hidden spring, maybe a dog or a fox I could tame. Anything to break the oppressive silence? At night, strange cries echoed from the jungle inland. Something big, or nothing at all. He told himself there were safer places to sleep, and for a while that was true. There was no real reason to push deeper into the island. No need to tempt whatever lay beyond the trees. He had food, water, and a humble shelter that faced the sea, where he could watch the horizon and pretend the world hadn't ended. It wasn't comfort. Not really, but it was something. Familiar, predictable, and in the silence even that began to feel like company. But the silence had grown heavier lately, more presence than absence. Each wave against the shore reminded him how long it had been since he'd heard another voice. With the sun dipping low, casting golden rays across the waves, he resolved to scour the remaining parts of the island, his heart set on finding something, anything, that would remind him he was more than a solitary castaway, even if deep down he felt it was an impossible dream.